Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the Cyclopé Festival. The past 2 years have seen a tremendous amount of discussion about women and their voices in advertising. Through social movements and industry-wide initiatives, women's points of view have been pushed to the forefront, focusing our attention on the importance of women in creative roles. However, the women's point of view on the production side has been relatively ignored. The following panel will discuss why, now more than ever, it is important to continue to drive the conversation about equality forward. So let's welcome Megan Kelly, the Managing Partner and Executive Producer at Honor Society, Emma Daines, the Group Managing Director and Executive Producer at Finn Design and Effects, and Jessica Kirsten, Creative Director at Cloud Factory.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. So our panel today has a few purposes. First is to introduce you to OWND. OWND is an international coalition of women-run companies. The second is really to open a discussion about women leadership in our industry. Essentially, women-owned companies make up less than 30% of our companies. And in some parts of our industry, it's a little bit more, and in some, it's a lot less. But we aren't here today to ask for preferential treatment. We are seeking parity, and we are not asking you to make us a quota or to force you to bid us. Instead, we'd like to discuss the importance of having more female and diverse voices within the advertising pipeline. With 85% of consumer decisions being made by women and a rising Generation Z, it seems essential that we start to think about how our ads are made. And finally, this is about balance and working together. So I'd like to welcome our guests today. Ingrid, who didn't get introduced at first, so we added at the last minute. Ingrid Braggeman has owned Tantor Films in Chile for 16 years, and her company provides production services in 6 countries in Latin America and now in Spain. Emma Daines. Emma is the founder of the visual effects company Finn Design and Effects, which was established in Sydney and has offices in Shanghai, Melbourne, and Singapore. With a background in VFX producing, Emma founded her company 18 years ago with a team of 5. Finn is now an internationally recognized VFX company with 70 people strong. Jessica Kirsten. Jessica is the founder, partner, and creative director for the Cloud Factory agency in Amsterdam. Prior to opening the Cloud Factory 7 years ago, Jessica was a creative director at DDB. And I'm Megan Kelly. I'm the founder of the 3-year-old production company Honor Society, which is in New York and LA. So the first question I'd like to ask everybody is, what made you start your own company? Ingrid?
Should I be the first one? Okay. Well, my story is beautiful because actually I've been championed by 2 very intelligent and nice UK men 16 years ago. They motivated me to start my company in the most beautiful way. I was working for them as an executive producer, selling their international directors in the Latin American market. And for some personal reason, they had to leave to UK back. And when they left, they left me a letter with all the office, with all the furniture, with everything, and said, Ingrid, you're perfectly entitled to do that alone, and we really believe you will, and that's why we let you all that and the representation of all of the directors, and just please go ahead and do your own company. But I haven't do it at the precise moment when they did it, because I was a little bit afraid of doing a company alone, especially a company in our industry. So I went to work with another company in Chile, a male company with 2 very strong men above. And they never let me any space to create my own things, to do what I wanted. When I started to do the things I wanted, to include Latin America into the game, to work together with Europe, they thought it's too crazy, it's too difficult, they didn't understand it. And at some point, I decided that the only way I could really do what I wanted to do in a company would do my own company. And that's how I started.
Jessica?
I worked at DDB for a long time, I think about 11 years or so. And I had amazing men help me and encourage me and try and find my own voice. But of course, at a certain point, you want to grow. And you have to find really your own processes of working, different, more practical ways of working in my sense. Less process, less meetings, more making. And I started Cloud Factory just starting from scratch, working with a lot of craftspeople. And that's still today in our DNA. We have our own craft shop. Sometimes in a meeting, there's welding next to our my office, and we make stuff all the time.
Cool.
Experiment, and yeah. Now I really have found my own way of working. That's why I had to do that.
Emma?
So I'd left my previous employ pretty burnt out and thought I'd go freelance and take stock. And I was a bit embittered about how the previous company had run their company, and I felt that a lot of talented artists were disrespected, and they worked tirelessly for this company for its own success, and weren't very well rewarded. I was convinced there was a better way of doing it, and I felt that there's room for a company that was about the talent and about the creative and working with like-minded people in a positive and stimulating environment. A former colleague, a friend of mine, approached me and asked me to help them set up an editing company in Sydney. And I turned to him and I said, no, let's open up a boutique visual effects company, and let's make it about the talent, and let's make it about the craft, and let's make it about the service, and let's make it about the experience. And so we did. And that was 18 years ago. And 5 years into that, I bought that partner out, and that's how it started Vin.
And for me, I was brought into a company to start their live action division, and was really successful at that. It was an older company, and the owner of the company was a bit disrespectful. And one day when we were having a creative discussion about the future of the business, got in my face and essentially screamed at me that, this was his company, and I needed to do it his way. That was the way it was, except there was a lot of profanity and this close to my face. And I sort of said, okay, well, why am I doing this for you? Why am I making money for you when I could go off and do this on my own terms and my own vision and do it my way? So yeah, we all have different different ways of starting this. So Ingrid, what made you come up with this idea for Owned? What was the genesis of this? It was a can, right?
Yeah, it was a can this year. Actually, I went to some of the panels that were around about women. It was a lot of debate about the female power in the industry, why women are not doing more, or why women should be in different areas of our pipeline, should be getting privileges just for being women. And I just thought it's actually not necessary to be doing this because you are a woman. It's not the question of if you're a woman or a man, if you do a company, or if you work in here or there. It's about that being a woman is a natural thing, and as a human, you have the right to start companies or to work the same way that a man, because we are just a complement. We are together. We are not different, and we're different because we're women, but we are professionally not different. And it was the beautiful casualty that one of those days in Cannes, it was an award of a very important corporation. And the manager of that has been introduced to me, and we've been talking about the fact of the women in the different areas. And he said, it's weird, but I never had like a network of women owning companies. And I thought, yeah, we should create one, and one that is very positive and inclusive and come with another perspective to the whole female discussion. And that's why we started. And beautifully wise, we are already a lot. And we didn't even launch it.
Right, and when we were talking about it too, you said, oh, wait, we should create this network. And I said, well, I think that there are lists that exist of female-owned companies, in the States, but everybody I've talked to doesn't know how to find them or where to find them or, where to seek us out. So why don't we put it all in one place so people can sort of find us if they would like to find us?
Yeah.
So Emma, I'd start this question with you, but I think I'll let everybody else answer it. Why do you feel it's necessary, or do you not feel it's necessary to talk about gender, and why not be judged on the work that you're doing rather than who you are?
I definitely think we should be judged on the work that we're doing, and by our own merit. I think we absolutely should be. I think the gender discussion is because of the quite clear imbalance of the male-female ratio in the industry. And I think that we have to have the gender discussion so we can actually all group together as a unit and work out how we can actually create more a balance between male female, and so it's I think we're all sitting here because as females, women own business. Men and women have had to have strength and ambition and resilience and a lot of energy to set up our own companies. But we women could, sitting here, and I'm sure there's lots in the audience too, can be an example, set ourselves as an example as it can be done, and to encourage other women doing what we've done. Thank you.
Jessica, did you want to say something? Or?
Well, I think it's important that you have. I can only speak as a creative, because I've always been on the creative department and only had guys around me, which I always was fine. And I teamed with a guy. It worked out really well. But of course, if there's very specific male work out there, and I think I always felt I made different kind of work. And I don't want to adjust myself to a certain way of working. And I think women will bring a different color to the industry, fresh energy, different perspective. Because it is true that men and women are very different, and that's a good thing. And we definitely don't always understand each other. And but that's why I think it's also important. Women are our target audience just as much as men. And I just find it smart for companies to have more women, to have their perspective on briefs and come up with different solutions. And therefore also there will be more space for female directors to also give that energy in it.
Right.
I think there will come much more different kind of work out of the pipeline if we mix it up more.
And Ingrid, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I said before, I really think this working together, this bringing up new women company is a sort of annexing it to what it was the families, like we get younger guys, younger girls that can start a way of thinking which is different, where there's not this question if it's a woman or a man. It's just we do it together, we do it in another way, we embrace them, we mentor them, we love them the same way. And when they see that, they will also feel encouraged to do their own things without discriminations, and especially without this sort of war between men and women, which is following anywhere. Actually, it's not helping the industry or the society.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we have to acknowledge that we have a diversity issue within this industry, and that we need a little bit more perspective, and that sometimes if we don't start talking about the fact that we don't have equality, and that we are 51% of the population, and yet somehow we're owning less than 30% of the companies, and that a lot of women are running companies and not having a piece of that. It's a conversation, and we don't start to talk about it, and we don't acknowledge it, and we keep pretending that everybody's equal, then nothing ever changes. And I don't think anybody's pushing or asking anybody to, make revolutionary changes, but I think we're all asking everybody to think about it a little bit more. And I think it's important to bring that up, to at least acknowledge that, hey, maybe we have a problem. Maybe there are solutions here that we can think of together. Jessica, you just sort of hit on this a little bit. So in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of focus on women directors and creatives. Why is it important for brands to consider women owners in the pipeline of advertising production in addition to creatives and directors?
Well, I think if you're a female owner, you can give a different perspective, because of course there's, in the career of a woman when she's between her 30s and the 40s, this is the top of her career, but it's also when she gets kids. And it's important that somehow a lot of times the women are the ones who take a step back. But if you have, as an owner of a company, you can also maybe allow men to pick up the kids from school, or when the kid is sick, it's not always the woman who have to do it. We can share it together, and then let a marriage also be a team. And if a company doesn't give you that space, then a lot of time the woman will be the first to raise her hand, and a lot of times. So I think in that sense, if we help in a practical sense and trust our employees that they're responsible, and if they go home on Friday afternoon to pick up the kids, they will be responsible to deliver the presentation or whatever work needs to be done. I think, and that needs to change. So then also women can go back to work, and not all the pressure also is not only on the man to be the provider of a home. I think it's much more healthy to have a balance in that.
Right. Emma, how do you feel that brands can benefit from using women-owned companies?
I actually think that brands would benefit on, again, gender balance equal. So I think we've touched on it before. Both male and female, we have different perspectives. So I think it's more important that actually the brands are working with a balance of men and women, and be it women-owned or men-owned. So yeah, I think it's about, as Jessica was saying, it's about the different perspectives that both women and men bring to the industry and to the company. So yeah.
Okay.
I would like to add that when you build a company, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man or whatever you are, you are building a space. You're building a space of constructing things. You're participating into the whole society. You're creating a community. Therefore, if you give women more chances to also create companies, you are creating new spaces of communication, of communities, of creation. So it makes the whole world balance better and have more participation of all the voices. And as Jessica said before, we are, I don't know which percentage of consumers, like we are the bigger consumer percentage are women.
85%.
And actually no women participate in most of the decisions. And it's not about justice, it's about also be clever, because you would hit the point faster, and you would have a more balanced society where there's no always one waiting for the other. It's just two people understanding each other and complementing each other at the company, at the house, at the relationships.
Yeah.
Jessica, you had mentioned that you had heard of Fact and Can about women consumers, but being targeted towards men. Do you remember exactly what that
Yeah,
was?
it was something about that women are not always targeted, which is very strange. I find, especially for instance for cars. I also, for instance, at an agency, the car brief would go to the guys, which I find totally unfair. I also drive a Jaguar, or I like nice cars, so women decide also in the home which car to purchase. So I think that if you make the industry more interesting with that, in that sense, that women also get to work on what are presumed the male briefs.
Right.
Is
A little bit more
important.
thought on
Yeah.
And I think that goes for female directors too, that we don't have to just be, women don't just have to be doing tampon commercials and mascara.
Yeah, the pamper ads can also, that brief
Yeah,
should
we
go to the
we
guys.
buy other things, guys. So why is it important to include women in owned who aren't full owners or majority owned stakeholders in companies, or who are partners and partial owners? What do you think that it brings to the table to include other women who?
Me?
Yeah, Ingrid. Yeah.
Well, first of all, this discussion about the percentage, because there's an existing organization in the United States that give a lot of advantages to women that are 50 and plus owner of a company. And when we were discussing about that, we realized that it's not really that important which percentage you have. Percentage has something to do with the kind of business you're doing. Sometimes a 10% of a company can be so much more than a 60% of another. Doesn't matter. This is really free up to the people who build a company. Important is that when you are giving a woman a percentage in a very typical male company or male companies type, you're giving them also a value of considering this woman important part of it, also creator of the thing, and also rewarding her with that. And also committing her to be responsible on that too, because at the end, there is no real company where there is no equality in responsibility, in the earnings, in the shares, also in the loss, in the problems, in the moments where things are not that easy. And then it's making everybody responsible of what we're doing and what we are creating for the future generations. So I think the percentage is not really important. It's important that you are part of it and that you are really legally also part of it. Mm-hmm. So you feel that you are taking decisions there.
Yeah, agreed.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and what is nice, I think, also about OWN, that it's nice to have other women that you can, because women just in general like to talk about things. That just that's how we are. And we want to share because it's difficult to have your own company. It's tough. It's nice that you can share with each other struggles and also successes, and but also in the future that other women who are daring to make a step, that we can be there for them and explain how to do it.
How do you think that we can encourage more women to start companies?
I think doing exactly what we're doing here now. I mean, the initiative of Owned is a really good first step. And I think it's mentoring. I think it's telling our story and showing women out there it can be done. And it's not to say that there's not going to be obstacles on the way, but it makes you stronger working through those obstacles. And I think for us, it's paving the way for the new generation. And I think you know, how we're bringing up our children and how we're imparting our knowledge and our beliefs within the younger generation is going to help, you know, change this imbalance. And I think that, you know, it's how we've got to be strong and got to encourage people to be strong and to be ambitious and to be adventurous and to be not afraid. And that's what we as roles can show to help them mentor, is don't be afraid. It's out there, it can be done, and it's really rewarding. My journey's incredibly rewarding, and I have two daughters, and they see how positive I am about my workforce, and they're proud the fact that their mum's got a company, but they're proud because their mum's got a company. They're not proud because their mum's a woman, and I think that's who we're bringing up. And so I think that's how we can encourage who's coming in our you know, footsteps.
Right. And I also think it's important to talk about how men can be a part of this and how much we need you guys. And I think that from all of our discussions and a lot of the discussions I've been having with people is, you know, men have been an important part of how we were able to succeed, especially in, you know, some industries, parts of these companies that are really male dominated, that the fact that we had male mentors or we had male champions who really took an interest in us at a young age and let us take chances and gave you a company, and, you know, that we were lucky to have that and thankful to have that. And what worries me a little bit is some of the conversations I've had in the past year with men is I think you guys are a little bit afraid now to do that somebody's going to accuse you of Me Too, or and that scares me, that somehow that will stop, that you won't want to mentor the new art director or the production coordinator or somebody who you think is smart and has talent because she's a woman, because you're afraid of what might happen or what you might be accused of. I think that we all know the difference between harassment and encouragement, and I think it would be great if we could kind of go back to that and really making sure that we're looking at the younger women in our office and finding out ways that we can encourage them and further their careers. And you don't have to be a mentor, that sometimes is too formal, but you can be a champion or an ally, and that's, you know, another way that you guys can help us. And thank you for considering, you know, continuing to support us. So how can women owners help to change things? Jessica?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it already a bit, but I just think it's important that we are part of the society, and that it becomes the normal thing, that it's not strange that you are a woman owner.
Right.
I've never had that feeling, by the way, but
Right.
in Holland it's quite normal, I think. Not maybe in our industry, but we're female owners in our country. We have many, of course.
Right. Ingrid?
Well, I think we realized being together in these days that also the region where you come from makes a big difference in the approach you can have to that topic. I come from Latin America. We are our industry association, which is here, by the way, Chile. I'm the only woman. That's like crazy, isn't it? Like it shows that there's still a lot of space to be made for women. And I think we found that in India there were like no one, or like it's crazy. It's a work to be done, and to encourage people or motivate them women to open companies, motivating the society to move forward into a real equality, which doesn't mean that a man and a woman are equal, because they will never be. We are different than men, and we love to be different. but we are equal capable and we have equal opportunities. We should have equal opportunities and we should have equal rights. And yes, that's what you're doing when you open a company. As a woman, you're creating a new space for new words, and it's really worth it, I think.
Emma?
Well, yeah, I echo both what Jessica and Ingrid have said, but it's creating a company that actually creates an environment to let women grow within that environment. But not only that, there's another side of it. I've got my company in Sydney, 25% women, 75% men. In Shanghai, 30% women, 70% men. So, but what I do is encourage the men in my company to embrace their, well, I don't have to encourage, they ask me, and of course I say yes, is their wives or partners have careers of their own. And so it's partake in sharing that responsibility of raising children. And I think you touched on it too before, Jessica, when their wives want to return to the workforce is allowing that flexibility within the company. So not just the flexibility for women in your company, but for the men in your company as well. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. We wanted to show you our initial group of companies. We've got 50 companies that have joined us so far. We'd love to hear from you if you are interested in joining us. We'd love to hear your questions, your concerns. If you want to contact us, there we are. Oh, sorry. I don't know how. Oh, wait, go back? I don't know how to go back.
Okay, thank you.
I'm pressing the red one. Oh, there, oh, wait, no, now I went too far.
And while we're looking at this, if there are any questions from the audience, we're having a Q&A now.
I'm gonna, oh, sorry.
Hi, great panel. I just wanted to ask if you have any thoughts on how we as an industry can help kind of seed the future of female talent across post-production as directors. Are there any tangible ways to, really get people, women especially, interested in joining our industry?
Yeah, because there's not always a lot of offer. That's also true. That I think maybe sometimes because the kind of work our industry makes maybe not is always appealing for female creatives, and maybe they choose a different creative industry to go for. But I think as soon as more women will participate in it and there's more female work out there, I think they might be more
interested
also,
to join. Like I was saying too about finding women to champion and take interest in. I think I could kill you all with statistics for hours on all of this, but if you look at the statistics, young women are promoted across all industries at a much lower rate than men are. I think that decisions are made about what young women want versus what men want and what they're interested in. And, maybe finding a young woman in your office, an intern, et cetera, and making sure that she gets to stand behind the camera and talk to the director or talk to the DP or sit with the executive producer or sit with your flame artist, really making sure that there's an interest. And, I think that goes for everybody. But I think sometimes I from my personal experience coming up, those kinds of things got shown to the male PAs, and the female PAs got put in the wardrobe room or in the production office. And I think if we just stop and go, oh, hey, let me think about this differently, it will change.
Well, I can just support what you say. We do a lot of out-venture things in our service industry, and myself at the beginning was choosing the man to drive the car and was afraid that the helicopter would be piloted by a woman, and it was a little bit like ironic. So then I started to realize that some women were really good on the pickup truck, or they could do exactly the same work. And as Jessica said, if you don't offer the opportunity to do different things, then people cannot show if they're good or not. This is installed in our subconscious that a woman does these kind of things and a man the other. And the worst part of that is that we are not just damaging the woman. We are doing a lot of damage to the men, because men also want to have their space of creativity and would also like to share being a father or being with you doing things together and not feel always like they have to be the man, the figure of the man we created, which I think we all want to get rid of that in the past and start this new society where we are equal happy somehow. Or?
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah. So any other questions?
I think there's one over, yeah.
I think why this is really important, I think it's very important that we are visible. I think at the moment we're invisible, and I think by being visible, by establishing this, we're not threatening men, we're not saying men are not, this, you know, that we're any different. We just need to be visible so that the younger people coming through can be inspired by us, can see that women can own businesses, can be successful in business, can handle business fairly and ethically. And I think that this owned by women will make us more visible. And I think it's also critically important because one of the things that we all need to do is when we employ people, we have to have gender blindness. So we need to treat the boys who work for us, the girls who work for us, the men, the women, in exactly the same way. And by demonstrating that, hopefully, we will bring through a new generation into the film industry, which doesn't choose because you're a man or a woman. I mean, obviously people, you know, we know that our business is very, very social. We're all being very, very social here, and men sometimes like to drink with men, and anybody who's been to AdFest knows that that can be an interesting environment as a woman as well. But, you know, we're not talking about socializing. We're talking about recognizing the fact that women have absolutely equal talents, absolutely equal intellect, absolutely equal organizational skills, and we need to be visible and show that to people. So what I'm hoping that Owned will bring us is visibility to inspire the women coming through, the younger women who think, oh, yeah, I can do that. So thank you very, very much for doing it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. It's been a pleasure.